The contract burned with holographic fire as Kieran Holt pressed his thumb to the seal. 18 billion lives hung in the balance, and the price for their survival was him. "You have 48 hours to prepare," Ambassador Ryloth announced, his crystalline features reflecting the chamber lights like fractured ice. "House Vaelrun does not tolerate delays. The Concordat demands immediate compliance or Earth loses its trading privileges. Your people starve within the year." Kieran stared at the alien diplomat, his jaw tight. 28 years of military service had prepared him for combat, for impossible decisions under fire, for watching good soldiers die. Nothing had prepared him for this. "And if I refuse?" Ryloth's laugh chimed like breaking glass. "Then refuse. Watch your planet descend into famine while the Galactic Council shrugs and moves on. Humans are replaceable, Captain Holt. Your pride is not." The weight of billions settled onto Kieran's shoulders. He thought of his sister's children, of the crowded food dispensaries already rationing supplies, of Earth's precarious position among species that had mastered space travel while humanity was still building pyramids. "What does House Vaelrun gain from this?" he asked. "A curiosity," Ryloth said. "Thessara wishes to study human resilience up close. Your species fascinates her. Consider yourself fortunate. Most research subjects do not receive legal protections." Kieran signed. The wedding occurred on Vaelrun Prime, a world of impossible architecture where gravity shifted between districts and buildings grew from crystalline seeds. Kieran stood in ceremonial armor that felt 2 sizes too small, watching his future approach down an aisle that seemed to stretch into infinity. Thessara of House Vaelrun moved like liquid mercury, her form partially incorporeal, shifting between states of matter with each step. She stood 9 feet tall in her current configuration, with eyes that held the depth of solar systems and skin that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns he could not read. "You are smaller than anticipated," she said, her voice harmonizing across 3 octaves simultaneously. "How disappointing." The gathered nobility of House Vaelrun laughed, a sound like wind through metal chimes. Kieran kept his expression neutral. This was a game he had learned in the military: show no weakness, give no satisfaction to those who seek your humiliation. "Appearances can be deceiving," he replied. The ceremony proceeded in a language Kieran barely understood, his translator implant struggling with the archaic dialect. He repeated words that bound him to an alien, to a house, to a future that looked nothing like the one he had imagined when he enlisted to protect Earth. When it finished, Thessara regarded him with something between curiosity and contempt. "You will reside in the Western Tower. Do not disturb me unless summoned. I have research to conduct." She flowed away, leaving Kieran standing alone in a chamber filled with beings who viewed him as a purchased specimen. The Western Tower became his cage. 50 floors of alien luxury that felt like a prison cell with better furniture. Servants attended him, silent creatures with too many limbs who brought food he could barely digest in clothing that did not fit properly. They watched him constantly, recording his every movement for Thessara's research. Kieran established routines because routines kept soldiers sane. Morning exercises despite the shifting gravity. Afternoon study of Vaelrun culture and language. Evening meditation to keep the rage and helplessness at bay. He was property now, a specimen in a gilded laboratory, but he would not break. 3 weeks passed before Thessara summoned him. Her laboratory occupied the entire central spire of the estate, a massive chamber where reality seemed negotiable. Kieran watched as she manipulated gravitational fields with casual gestures, bending space itself to observe quantum interactions. "You maintain physical conditioning despite having no threats to fight," she observed without turning. "Why waste the energy?" "Discipline," Kieran said. "It keeps the mind sharp." "Fascinating. Your species clings to ritual even when logic suggests abandonment." She finally faced him, her form solidifying into something more humanoid but still distinctly other. "I have been studying your psychological profile. You exhibit remarkable emotional regulation for a being purchased against its will. Most species would have attempted escape or self-termination by now. Most species did not survive Earth." Thessara's eyes brightened with interest. "Elaborate." Kieran chose his words carefully. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. Ice ages, predators, diseases, natural disasters. We learned to endure because giving up meant extinction. You can buy my service, but you cannot buy my surrender. Defiance wrapped in compliance. How delightfully contradictory. She gestured to a containment field where something writhed in visible agony. I am attempting to stabilize a quantum paradox. It requires sustained observation to collapse the probability wave without destruction. I have failed 147 times. What happens when it fails? Localized spatial collapse. Everything within 20 meters ceases to exist across all possible timelines. She said it the way someone might describe a minor inconvenience. Your presence may provide the variable I require. Human consciousness appears to interact with quantum fields differently than other known species. Kieran stared at the roiling energy that could erase him from existence. You want to use me as a reality anchor? If you survive, you will have proven useful. If you do not, I will request a replacement from Earth. She paused, reading something in his expression. You may refuse. The contract permits it for life-threatening research. And if I refuse? I document your cowardice and select a different approach. Your value as a research subject diminishes. House Vaelrun re-evaluates Earth's trading agreement based on the quality of goods provided. Another impossible choice. Another billion lives balanced against his own. Kieran stepped toward the containment field. Tell me what I need to do. The process felt like drowning in static. Kieran stood at the edge of the probability collapse, his mind somehow holding space steady through force of will alone. Every instinct screamed to flee as reality fractured around him, but he had learned long ago to function despite fear. Your neural patterns are stabilizing the field, Thessara said, her voice distant through the roar of bending spacetime. Maintain focus. Do not let your consciousness fragment. Sweat poured down Kieran's face as hours compressed and expanded simultaneously. He focused on breathing, on the memory of Earth's gravity, on anything solid enough to anchor existence itself. When the field finally collapsed into stability, Kieran dropped to his knees, gasping. Thessara stood motionless for a long moment before speaking. Impossible. You should have fragmented after 17 minutes. You endured for 3 hours. Is that good? Kieran managed. It is unprecedented. She moved closer, studying him with new intensity. Human consciousness is more resilient than any documented species. You do not simply observe reality. You impose your will upon it through sheer stubborn persistence. We call it determination. I call it scientifically invaluable. Something shifted in her tone. You exceeded all projections. By Vaelrun law, subjects who prove exceptional value gain elevated status within the household. What does that mean? It means you may dine at the main table tonight. Wear something presentable. The dining hall could have held 1,000 guests, but only 15 attended that evening. Kieran recognized several as high-ranking members of House Vaelrun, beings of such power and influence that planetary governors bowed before them. Thessara gestured to the seat beside her own, a position of honor that drew immediate whispers from the assembled nobility. Lord Castellan Dravik, Thessara said, indicating a being composed of living crystal, this is Kieran Holt, my research partner. He stabilized a Category 7 paradox this afternoon. Dravik's facets rotated to examine Kieran. Your human performed satisfactorily? How unexpected. He performed beyond all theoretical limits, Thessara corrected. His consciousness refused to fragment under conditions that would destroy most species instantly. Interesting. Dravik's tone suggested he found it anything but. And what prevents the specimen from applying such abilities toward escape or violence? Honor, Kieran said before Thessara could respond. I gave my word. Where I come from, that means something. The table fell silent. Several beings exchanged glances that Kieran could not interpret. Honor, Dravik repeated slowly. You reference the primitive concept of self-imposed behavioral restriction despite having both motive and apparent capacity for defection? Yes. Why? Because 18 billion people depend on this arrangement working. Because I would rather die keeping my word than live as someone who breaks it. Because honor is not primitive. It is what separates thinking beings from animals. Dravik leaned back, his crystalline structure chiming softly. Thessara, your human is either magnificently philosophical or magnificently foolish. Perhaps both, Thessara said. Which may explain his effectiveness. The meal continued with multiple courses of foods Kieran could barely identify. He ate what he could stomach and observed the complex social dynamics at play. House Vaelrun operated on layers of obligation, prestige, and calculated alliances that made military command structures look simple by comparison. You are staring, Thessara said quietly. Learning, Kieran corrected. If I am to be here, I should understand the environment. Most specimens do not care to understand. They exist in comfortable ignorance. I am not most specimens. No. Thessara's bioluminescent pattern shifted to something Kieran was beginning to recognize as curiosity. You demonstrably are not. The weeks that followed established a pattern. Kieran became Thessara's constant companion in the laboratory, his unique consciousness serving as anchor, observer, and occasionally test subject for experiments that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. He stabilized temporal loops, witnessed the birth of artificial stars, and held quantum states in superposition through concentration alone. The work was exhausting. It was also fascinating. You are not what I expected, Thessara admitted one evening as they monitored a pocket dimension's expansion rate. What did you expect? A broken thing. Humans arrived at the galactic stage recently. You lack the technological sophistication of elder races, the psychic abilities of the Krenethi, the longevity of the eternal courts. I expected fragility. She gestured at the thriving pocket universe. Instead, I find impossible resilience. Earth teaches resilience. You either adapt or you die. And you chose to adapt to being property? Kieran met her eyes steadily. I chose to protect my people. Everything else is just circumstances I navigate. You speak of circumstances that would drive most beings to madness as if they were weather patterns. Because breaking accomplishes nothing. Enduring creates possibilities. Thessara was quiet for a long moment. You are wasted as a specimen. This arrangement insults what you are. Then change it. I cannot. The contract binds both parties. House Vaelrun does not renegotiate terms. Cannot or will not? The distinction is irrelevant. But something in her tone suggested otherwise. The crisis came without warning. Kieran was working alone in the western tower when alarms shrieked through the estate. Gravity fluctuated wildly as reality itself seemed to buckle under some immense pressure. He ran toward the central spire, finding Thessara surrounded by collapsing containment fields. One of her experiments had gone catastrophically wrong, cascading into a chain reaction that threatened to tear a hole through spacetime itself. Get away from here, she commanded as he entered. The containment breach cannot be stopped. This entire district will be consumed within minutes. How do I stabilize it? You cannot. No single consciousness can anchor a breach this large. I need at least 50 Vaelrun to form a stabilization matrix, and we cannot gather them in time. Kieran studied the expanding tear in reality, watching it devour matter and energy with indiscriminate hunger. What if I am not anchoring alone? What if I use your consciousness as well? That is theoretically impossible. Our neural structures are incompatible. Everything I have done here was theoretically impossible. He moved to her side. Tell me how to link our minds. The process could kill you. Could kill us both. Better than definitely letting everyone die. Show me. Thessara hesitated only a moment before beginning the neural bridge protocol. Kieran felt her consciousness brush against his own, alien and vast, terrifyingly complex. Every instinct screamed that his mind would shatter under the contact. He held anyway. The bridge stabilized. Two utterly different forms of consciousness evolved on opposite sides of the galaxy, finding unexpected harmony. Kieran provided the stubborn focus, the refusal to let reality slip. Thessara provided the theoretical framework, the scientific understanding of what needed to hold. Together they became something neither could achieve alone. The breach resisted. It pulled at them with forces that wanted to scatter their thoughts across dimensions. Kieran felt his sense of self beginning to fray, but he had endured worse. He remembered standing in frozen trenches, remembered watching friends die, remembered signing away his freedom to save billions. He had survived everything Earth and the galaxy threw at him. He would survive this. Hours became meaningless as they held the breach. Kieran felt Thessara wavering, her vast consciousness struggling under the strain. He poured strength across their link, lending her his determination, his absolute refusal to quit. "How are you still coherent?" her thought whispered through their connection. Any being should have fragmented by now. Humans do not know when to quit. It is our greatest weakness and greatest strength. You are insane. Probably. Keep holding. When the breach finally collapsed into stability, they both dropped, minds still linked, exhausted beyond anything Kieran had experienced. Thessara was the first to speak aloud. "You saved this entire district. Saved me. You would have done the same. Would I?" She pulled herself upright, her form flickering with exhaustion. "I purchased you as research material. Treated you as a curiosity. You had every reason to let me suffer the consequences of my own failure. That is not who I am. No." Thessara's voice held something new. Something like respect. "It is not. Kieran Holt, I have been unconscionably foolish. You are not a specimen. You are not property. You are a being of extraordinary capability and honor that I have insulted through my arrogance." "What are you saying?" "I am saying the contract was a mistake. I will petition House Vaelrun for its dissolution. You have more than fulfilled any reasonable obligation. Earth will retain its trading privileges. You may return home." Kieran stood slowly, processing her words. Freedom. Return to Earth. Everything he had dreamed about since signing that contract. "And if I choose to stay?" Thessara froze. "Why would you possibly choose that?" "Because the work matters. Because what we accomplished tonight proves that humans in Vaelrun can achieve things neither species can manage alone. Because I am not finished learning what is possible." He met her eyes. "Because you have become more than my captor." "You would stay voluntarily? After everything?" "Not as property. Not as a specimen. As a partner. As an equal." Thessara's bioluminescent patterns flared through colors Kieran had never seen her display. "The scandal would be extraordinary. No Vaelrun has ever proposed equal partnership with a purchased subject. The nobility would be outraged. Let them be outraged. You said yourself that we achieved the impossible tonight. Perhaps it is time House Vaelrun expanded its definition of what is possible." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes in summer rain. "You are either the bravest being I have ever encountered or the most foolish. I have been told they are often the same thing." The petition went before the House Vaelrun Council 7 days later. Kieran stood beside Thessara as she argued for dissolving the purchase contract and replacing it with a formal research partnership between equals. Lord Castellan Dravik led the opposition. "Unprecedented. Scandalous. You suggest elevating a primitive specimen to the status of House Vaelrun?" "I suggest recognizing capability regardless of origin," Thessara countered. "Kieran Holt has proven himself more resilient, more capable, and more honorable than half the beings in this chamber. He saved 300,000 lives during the containment breach, including my own. By our own laws, such service demands recognition. He is human. They barely qualify as a spacefaring species." Kieran stepped forward. With respect, Lord Castellan, that argument works both ways. If humans are as primitive as you claim, it makes our achievements even more impressive. We reached the stars in less than a century. We stabilize quantum paradoxes that destroy your most advanced scientists. We endure conditions that would shatter supposedly superior species. He let that sink in. Perhaps you fear not that we are too primitive, but that we are not primitive enough. The chamber erupted in debate. Kieran stood calmly as centuries-old hierarchies collided with undeniable evidence of human capability. The vote was closer than anyone expected. In the end, tradition yielded to pragmatism. The purchase contract dissolved. A new partnership agreement took its place, granting Kieran status within House Vaelrun as recognized researcher and honored colleague. That night, Thessara found him in the Western Tower, which no longer felt like a cage. "You realize this changes nothing about the difficulty of our work," she said. "I would be disappointed if it did. You realize the nobility will scrutinize every interaction between us, searching for scandal or weakness? Let them search. You realize that you have voluntarily bound yourself to a life of research that may never end, problems that have no solutions, and a partner who has the social skills of a quantum singularity?" Kieran smiled. "That might be the nicest thing anyone has ever said to me." Thessara's pattern shifted to something that might have been amusement. "You are either the most idealistic being in the galaxy or completely insane." Again, often the same thing. They returned to the laboratory together, not as master and specimen, not as researcher and subject, but as partners in the greatest adventure either species had yet attempted. The galaxy watched as human and Vaelrun shattered every assumption about what such partnerships could achieve. They stabilized wormholes, created pocket universes, and pushed the boundaries of physics into territories no single species had dared explore. Earth's status in the galactic community transformed. If a human could earn partnership with House Vaelrun through merit alone, what other assumptions about humanity needed re-evaluation? Kieran Holt had been forced into an alien marriage to save his planet. What no one expected, including himself, was that he would transform it into something that changed the galaxy forever. 3 years later, when asked about his decision to stay, Kieran gave the same answer he always gave. "I gave my word to protect Earth." Turns out the best way to do that was not by leaving, but by proving what humans can become when given the chance. We do not just survive impossible circumstances. We transform them into opportunities. That is what makes us human. Thessara, standing beside him during the interview, added her own observation. He was purchased as property and became a partner. Forced into servitude and chose to stay as an equal. Humanity does not simply endure adversity. They weaponize it into strength. The galaxy is still learning to understand what that means. The interviewer pressed further. "Do you regret how this arrangement began?" Kieran considered the question carefully. "I regret that it was necessary. I regret the circumstances. But I do not regret the outcome." Sometimes the worst beginnings lead to the most important destinations. And what destination is that? He looked at Thessara, at the laboratory where they had accomplished the impossible, at the future stretching before them full of unanswered questions and challenges yet to overcome. "Understanding," Kieran said. "Between species, between individuals, between what we are and what we might become." That destination was worth every difficult step of the journey. The interview ended, but the work continued. In the laboratories of House Vaelrun, a human and an alien pushed the boundaries of science and shattered the limitations of prejudice. They had both expected a transaction. What they built instead was a partnership that proved love, respect, and collaboration were not limited by biology, tradition, or the circumstances of their beginning. The galaxy had forced them together. They chose to stay that way. And in that choice, they showed every species watching that the most powerful force in the universe was not gravity, not energy, not even time itself. It was the decision to see past appearances, past assumptions, past the limitations others imposed, and recognize the value of what stood before you. Kieran had been forced into an alien marriage. The outcome shocked everyone, most of all himself. Not because it failed, but because it succeeded beyond anything anyone imagined possible. And on Earth, in the food dispensaries that no longer rationed, in the schools where children learned alongside alien students, in the research facilities where human scientists collaborated with species that once dismissed them, Kieran's sacrifice transformed into something he never expected: hope. Not just for survival, but for a future where humanity stood as equals among the stars, earning their place not through force or desperation, but through the same stubborn determination that let one man stand firm when the galaxy tried to break him. He had given his word. He had kept it. And in keeping it, he had changed everything. If you enjoyed the story, like the video and subscribe for more.